Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna.
You know what they put.
Namaste Narasimhaya, Praladadayine, Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha, Shilatam Kanakhalare, Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha, Yato yato yami tato Narsimha, Pare Narsimha, Hidaye Narsimha, Narsimha Madim Sharanam Prapade, Tava Kara Kamala Vare Nakham, Adbhuta Shringa, Hiranyakashipu, Tanubringa, Keshavadita, Narahari Rupa, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Keshavadita, Narahari Rupa, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Nrsimhadev, Jaya Nrsimhadev, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur Hari Bol. Prahlad Maharaj, Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Namaha Tulasi Vrindai Tulsi Devi Ai Priyai Keshava Sacha Krishna Bhakti Prada Devi Satyavate Namo Namah Vrindai Tulsi Devi Ai Priyai Keshava Sacha Krishna Bhakti Prada Devi Satyavate Namo Namah Vrindai Tulsi Devi Ai Priyai Keshava Sacha Krishna Bhakti Prada Devi Satyavate Namo Namah Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Priyasi मुरार कृपा करि कर तरे वृंदावन वासी अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियवास नयने हेरिब सदा युगल रूप राशि निवेदन धर सखीर अनुगत कर सेवाधिकार दिए कर निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दासे काय नमरहार श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा हसी श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा नभासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रियासी नमो नमः यानि कानि पापानि ब्रह्मत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे Hare Krishna.
We're going to do it again.
Madhya Leela, chapter number 8, shloka 204-205. Without the help of the gopis, one cannot enter into these pastimes. Only one who worships the Lord in the ecstasy of the gopis, following in their footsteps, can engage in the service of Shri Radha Krishna and the Bhashyas of Vrindavan. Only then can one understand the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna. There is no other procedure for understanding. Purport. The means for returning home, for going back to Godhead, is devotional service. But everyone has a different taste in the Lord's service. One may be inclined to serve the Lord in servitude, dasyaras, fraternity, sakyaras, or paternal or parental love, vatsalyaras. But none of these can enable one to enter into the service of the Lord in conjugal love. To attain such service, one has to follow in the footsteps of the gopis in the ecstasy of Sakhi Bhav. Then only can one understand the transcendental mellow of conjugal love. In the Ujjwal Nilamani, Srila Rup Goswami advises Prema Leela Viharanam Samyak Vistarika Saki Vishramba Ratna Peticha. One who expands the conjugal love of Krishna and his enjoyment among the gopis is called a Sakhi. Such a person is a confidential gopi in the conjugal affairs. Such assistants are like jewels in the form of Krishna's confidence. The actual business of the Sakhis is described thus in Ujjwal Nilamani. In the conjugal pastimes of Krishna, Krishna is the hero, Nayaka, and Radhika is the heroine, Naika. The first business of the gopis is to chant the glories of both the hero and the heroine. Their second business is to gradually create a situation in which the hero may be attracted to the heroine and vice versa. Their third business is to induce both of them to approach each other. Their fourth business is to surrender unto Krishna. The fifth is to create a jovial atmosphere. The sixth, to give them assurance to enjoy their pastimes. The seventh, to dress and decorate both hero and heroine. The eighth, to show expertise in expressing their desires. The ninth, to conceal the faults of the heroine. The 10th, to cheat their respective husbands and relatives. The 11th, to educate. The 12th, to enable both the hero and heroine to meet at the proper time. The 13th, to fan the hero and heroine. The 14th, to sometimes reproach the hero and heroine. The 15th, to set conversations in motion. And the 16th, to protect the heroine by various means. Some materialistic solutions.
केन्या से अच्छा हाँ केन्या हाँ चैतन्य
नंबर है
हाँ है वृंदावन में रहते हैं अक्षर पात्र
Some materialistic
जाते तो है वहाँ पे पता है
Some materialistic sages who cannot actually understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna manufacture their own lifestyles without referring to authority. Such sages are called Sakhibeki, and sometimes they are called Gauranagari. They believe that the material body, which is fit to be eaten by jackals and dogs, is enjoyable for Krishna. Consequently, they artificially decorate the material body to attract Krishna, thinking themselves Sakhis. But Krishna is never attracted by the artificial grooming of the material body. As far as Srimati Radharani and her gopis are concerned, their bodies, homes, dresses, ornaments, endeavors, and activities are all spiritual. All of these are meant to satisfy the spiritual senses of Krishna. Indeed, they are so pleasing and endearing to Krishna. Anay Manoj? They are so pleasing and endearing to Krishna that he is subjugated by the influence of Srimati Radharani and her friends. They have nothing to do with anything mundane within the 14 planetary systems of the universe. Although Krishna is attractive to everyone, he is nonetheless attracted by the gopis and Srimati Radharani. One should not be misled by mental concoctions, supposing his material body to be perfect and deeming oneself a Sakhi. This is something like Ahangra Papasan, that is, a Mayavadi's worship of his own body as the supreme. Srila Jiva Goswami has cautioned mundaners to abstain from such conceptions. He also warns that thinking oneself one of the associates of the Supreme without following in the footsteps of the gopis is as offensive as thinking oneself the Supreme. Such thinking is an aparadha. One has to practice living in Vrindavan by hearing about the talks of the gopis with Krishna. However, one should not consider himself a gopi, for this is offensive. Text 206. The pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna are self-effulgent. They are happiness personified, unlimited, and all-powerful. Even so, the spiritual humors of such pastimes are never complete without the gopis, the Lord's personal friends. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is never complete without his spiritual potencies. Therefore, unless one takes shelter of the gopis, one cannot enter into the company of Radha and Krishna. Who can be interested in the spiritual pastimes without taking their shelter? This is a quotation from the Govinda Lilamrit 10.17. Shloka 207. There is an inexplicable fact about the natural inclinations of the gopis. The gopis never want to enjoy themselves with Krishna personally. Krishna Sahar, text 208. The happiness of the gopis increases 10 million times when they serve to engage Shri Radha and Krishna in the transcendental pastimes. Text 209. By nature.
Read it again and I'll go on.
Yes, Maharaj. Text 08. The happiness of the gopis increases 10 million times when they serve to engage Shri Radha and Krishna in their transcendental pastimes. Text 209. By nature, Srimati Radharani is just like a creeper of love of Godhead, and the gopis are the twigs, flowers, and leaves of that creeper. Text 210. When the nectar of Krishna's pastimes is sprinkled on that creeper, the happiness derived by the twigs, flowers, and leaves is 10 million times greater than that derived by the creeper itself. In his Amrit Prabha Bhashya, purport, in his Amrit Prabha Bhashya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states, Srimati Radharani is the creeper of love of Godhead, and the gopis are exactly like twigs, flowers, and leaves. When water is sprinkled on the creeper, the twigs, flowers, and leaves indirectly receive all the benefits of the creeper itself. But water sprinkled directly on the twigs, leaves, and flowers is not as effective as water sprinkled on the creeper's root. The gopis are not as pleased when they directly mix with Krishna as when they serve to unite Srimati Radharani with Krishna. Their transcendental pleasure lies in uniting them. Text 211. All the gopis, the personal friends of Srimati Radharani, are equal to her. Krishna is pleasing to the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi, just as the moon is pleasing to the lotus flower. His pleasure-giving potency is known as Ahladini, of which the active principle is Srimati Radharani. She is compared to a creeper with newly grown flowers and leaves. When the nectar of Krishna's pastimes is sprinkled on Srimati Radharani, all her friends, the gopis, immediately appreciate the pleasure 100 times more than if they were sprinkled themselves. Actually, this is not at all wonderful. Purport. This verse is also from the Govinda Lilamrit 10.16. Text 212. Although the gopis, Srimati Radharani's friends, do not desire to enjoy themselves directly with Krishna, Srimati Radharani makes a great endeavor to induce Krishna to enjoy himself with the gopis. Nanak, text 213. Presenting various pleas for the gopis, Srimati Radharani sometimes sends the gopis to Krishna just to enable them to associate with him directly. At such times, she enjoys a happiness 10 million times greater than that enjoyed through direct association. Text 214. The transcendental mellow is nourished by that mutual behavior in transcendental love of Godhead. When Lord Krishna sees how the gopis have developed pure love for him, he becomes very satisfied. Purport. Srimati Radharani and the gopis are not interested in the personal happiness derived from association with Krishna. Rather, they become happy by seeing one another associate with Krishna. In this way, their dealings are further nourished by love of Godhead, and seeing this, Krishna is very pleased. Text 215. It is to be noted that the natural characteristic of the gopis is to love the Supreme Lord. Their natural desire is not to be compared to material lust. Nonetheless, because their desire sometimes appears to resemble material lust, their transcendental love for Krishna is sometimes described as lust. Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that the material lust should never be attributed to Krishna, who is full of transcendental knowledge. Material lust cannot be engaged in the service of the Lord, for it is applicable to materialists, not to Krishna. Only prem or love of Godhead is applicable for the satisfaction of Krishna. Prem is full service rendered unto the Lord. The lusty affairs of the gopis actually constitute the topmost love of Godhead, because the gopis never act for their own pleasure, for their own personal satisfaction. They are simply pleased by engaging other gopis in the service of the Lord. The gopis derive more transcendental pleasure from indirectly engaging other gopis in the service of Krishna than from engaging in his service themselves. That is the difference between material lust and love of Godhead. Lust applies to the material world, and love of Godhead applies only to Krishna. Text 216. All the dealings of the gopis with Krishna are on the platform of pure love of Godhead. Such dealings are sometimes considered to be lusty, but because they are completely spiritual, Uddhav and all the other dearmost devotees of the Lord desire to participate in them. Purport. This is a quotation from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.285. Text 217. Lusty desires are experienced when one is concerned with his own personal sense gratification. The mood of the gopis is not like that. Their only desire is to satisfy the senses of Krishna. Text 218. Among the gopis, there is not a pinch of desire for sense gratification. Their only desire is to give pleasure to Krishna. And this is why they mingle with him and enjoy with him. Text 219. All the gopis said, Dear Krishna, we carefully hold your delicate lotus feet upon our hard breasts. When you walk in the forest, your soft lotus feet are pricked by small bits of stone. We fear that this is paining you. Since you are our life and soul, our minds are very much disturbed when your lotus feet are pained. Purport. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 31 chapter, text 19. Text 220. One who is attracted by that ecstatic love of the gopis does not care about popular opinion or the regulative principles of Vedic life. Rather, he completely surrenders unto Krishna and renders service unto him. Text 221. If one worships the Lord on the path of spontaneous love and goes to Vrindavan, he receives the shelter of Rajendra Nandan, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Purport. In all, there are 64 items listed for rendering of service unto Krishna, and these are the regulative principles enjoined in the Shastras and given by the spiritual master. One has to serve Krishna according to these regulative principles. But if one develops spontaneous love for Krishna as exhibited in the activities of those who live in Vrajabhumi, one attains the platform of Raganuga Bhakti. One who has developed this spontaneous love is eligible for elevation to the platform enjoyed by the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi. In Vrajabhumi, there are no regulative principles set forth for Krishna's service. Rather, everything is carried out in spontaneous, natural love for Krishna. There is no question of following the principles of the Vedic system. Such principles are followed within this material world, and as long as one is on the material platform, he has to execute them. However, spontaneous love of Krishna is transcendental. It may seem that the regulative principles are being violated, but the devotee is on the transcendental platform. Such service is called Gunapita or Nirguna, for it is not contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Text 222. In this liberated stage, the devotee is attracted by one of the five humors in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As he continues to serve the Lord in that transcendental mood, he attains a spiritual body to serve Krishna in Golok Vrindavana. Text 223. Those saintly persons who represent the Upanishads are vivid examples of this. By worshipping the Lord on the path of spontaneous love, they attained the lotus feet of Rajendra Nandan, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Papa. In the Golok Vrindavana planet, Krishna's servants are headed by Raktak and Patrak. Krishna's friends are headed by Shridama, Subala, and others. There are also elderly gopis and the cowherd man, headed by Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda, and others. All of these personalities are eternally engaged in the loving service of the Lord, in accordance with their specific attachments for Krishna. One who wants to return home to serve the Lord directly may be attracted to Krishna as a servant, friend, father, or mother. If a person continuously serves Krishna during this life in a particular ecstasy, upon giving up the material body, he attains a suitable spiritual body to serve Krishna in terms of his particular attachment. One may serve as a servant, friend, father, or mother. In the same way, one who wants to serve Krishna in conjugal love can attain a body under the guidance of the gopis. In this connection, the most vivid example is provided by those saintly personalities known as the Shrutis, who represent the Upanishads. The Shrutis understood that without serving Krishna and following in the footsteps of the gopis, there would be no possibility of their entering the kingdom of God and serving Krishna in the mood of conjugal love. Therefore, they engaged in spontaneous loving service unto Krishna and followed in the footsteps of the gopis. Text 224. Great sages conquer the mind and senses by practicing the mystic yoga system and controlling the breath. Thus, engaging in mystic yoga, they see the super soul within their hearts and ultimately enter into the impersonal Brahmana. But even the enemies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead attain that position simply by thinking of the Supreme Lord. However, the damsels of Vraja, the gopis, being attracted by the beauty of Krishna, simply wanted to embrace him and his arms, which are like serpents. Thus, the gopis ultimately tasted the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, the Upanishad can also taste the nectar of his lotus feet by following in the footsteps of the gopis. Purport. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 87th chapter, text 23, spoken by the Shrutis, the personified Vedas. Text 225. The word Samadrisha, mentioned in the fourth line of the previous verse, means following the mood of the gopis. The word Sama means the Shrutis attaining a body like those of the gopis. Text 226. The word Angri Padma Sudha means associating intimately with Krishna. One can attain such perfection only by spontaneous love of God. One cannot obtain Krishna in Golok Vrindavan simply by serving the Lord according to regulative principles. Text 227. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the son of Mother Yashoda, is accessible to those devotees engaged in spontaneous loving service, but is not as easily accessible to mental speculators, to those striving for self-realization by severe austerities and penances, or to those who consider the body the same as the self. Purport. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.9.21 is spoken by Srila Shukdev Goswami. It appears within a passage in which he glorifies the mother Yashoda and other devotees of Krishna by describing how they can subjugate him with their love. Text 228. Therefore, one should accept the mood of the gopis in their service. In such a transcendental mood, one should always think of the pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna. Text 229. After thinking of Radha and Krishna and their pastimes for a long time, and after getting completely free from material contamination, one is transferred to the spiritual world. There, the devotee attains an opportunity to serve Radha and Krishna as one of the gopis. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that the word Siddha Deha, perfect spiritual body, refers to a body beyond the material gross body composed of 5 elements and the subtle astral body composed of mind.
The next one.
Okay, Maharaj.
You know it translated now.
Text 230. Unless one follows in the footsteps of the gopis, he cannot attain the service of the lotus feet of Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. If one is overcome by knowledge of the Lord's opulence, he cannot attain the Lord's lotus feet, even though he is engaged in devotional service. Purport. One can worship Lakshmi Narayan by the process of Vidhimarg, worshipping the Lord with regulative principles, according to the instructions of the Shastra and the spiritual master. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Radha Krishna, cannot be directly worshipped by this process. The dealings between Radha and Krishna and the gopis are devoid of the opulences of Lakshmi Narayan. The process of Vidhimarg, following the regulative principles, is utilized in the worship of Lakshmi Narayan, whereas the process of spontaneous service, following in the footsteps of the gopis who are denizens of Vrindavana, is transcendently more advanced and is the process whereby Radha and Krishna are worshipped. One cannot attain this elevated position while worshipping the Lord in his opulence. Those attracted by the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna must follow in the footsteps of the gopis. Only then is it possible to enter into the Lord's service in Golok Vrindavan and directly associate with Radha and Krishna. Text 231. The unspoken example in this connection is the goddess of fortune, who worshipped Lord Krishna in order to attain his pastimes in Vrindavan. But due to her opulent lifestyle, she could not attain the service of Krishna in Vrindavan. Text 232. When Lord Krishna was dancing with the gopis in the Rasa Leela, the gopis were embraced around the neck by the Lord's arms. This transcendental favor was never bestowed upon the goddess of fortune or other consorts in the spiritual world. Nor was such a thing ever imagined by the most beautiful girls in the heavenly planets. Girls whose bodily luster and aroma resemble the beauty and fragrance of lotus flowers. And what to speak of worldly women who may be very, very beautiful according to material estimation. Purport. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.47.60. Text 233. After hearing this, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Ramanand Rai, and both of them, embracing shoulder to shoulder, began to cry. Text 234. The entire night was passed in this way, in ecstatic love of Godhead. In the morning, they both departed to tend to their respective duties. Text 235. Before departing from Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramanand Rai fell to the ground and caught hold of the Lord's lotus feet. He then spoke submissively as follows. Text 236. Sri Ramanand Rai said, "You have come here just to show me your causeless mercy. Therefore, stay here for at least 10 days and purify my polluted mind." Text 237. But for you, there is no one who can deliver all the living entities. For you alone can deliver love of Krishna. Text 238. The Lord replied, "Having heard about your good qualities, I have come here. I have come to hear about Krishna from you and thus purify my mind." Text 239. No purport knowledge. Text 239.
Read the translation.
Sure, Maharaj. The Lord replied, "Having heard about your good qualities, I have come here. I have come to hear about Krishna from you and thus purify my mind." Text 239. Now that I have actually seen your glories, what I heard about you is confirmed. As far as the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in a loving mood are concerned, you are the limit of knowledge. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found Ramanand Rai to be the best authority in transcendental knowledge of the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. In this verse, the Lord actually states that Ramanand Rai was the limit of this knowledge. Text 240. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "To say nothing of 10 days, as long I live, I shall find it impossible to give up your company." Text 241. "You and I shall remain together at Jagannath Puri. We shall pass our time together in joy, talking about Krishna and his pastimes." Text 242. In this way, the both departed to perform their respective duties. Then, in the evening, Ramanand Rai returned to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Text 243. Thus they met time and time again, sitting in a secluded place and jubilantly discussing devotional service by the question and answer process. Text 244. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked the questions and Sri Ramanand Rai gave the answers. In this way, they were engaged in discussion throughout the night. Text 245. On one occasion, the Lord inquired. No purport, Maharaj. Text 245. On one occasion, the Lord inquired, "Of all types of education, which is the most important?" Ramanand replied, "No education is important other than the transcendental devotional service of Krishna." Purport. Text 245 to text 257, next 12 verses, are all questions and answers between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramanand Rai. In these exchanges, there is an attempt to show the difference between material and spiritual existence. Education in is always transcendental and is the best of all forms of education. Material education aims at increasing the activities of material sense gratification. Beyond material sense gratification is another negative form of knowledge called Brahma Vidya or impersonal transcendental knowledge. But beyond that Brahma Vidya or knowledge of the impersonal Brahman is the knowledge of devotional service to the Supreme Lord Vishnu. This knowledge is higher. And higher still is devotional service to Lord Krishna, which is the topmost form of education. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 29th chapter, text 49, Tatkarma haritosham yatsa vidya tanmatirya. Work meant for pleasing the Supreme Lord is the best, and education that enhances one's Krishna consciousness is the best. Also, according to Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5, text 23 and 24, this is a statement given by Prahlad Maharaj in answer to a question raised by his father. Prahlad Maharaj said, to hear or chant about Lord Vishnu, to remember him, to serve his lotus feet, to worship him, to offer prayers to him, to become his servant and his friend, to sacrifice everything for his service. All these are varieties of devotional service. One who is engaged in such activities is understood to be educated to the topmost perfection. Text 246. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then asked Ramanand Rai, out of all glorious activities, which is the most glorious? Ramanand Rai replied, that person who is reputed to be a devotee of the Lord Krishna enjoys the utmost fame and glory. Purport. The greatest reputation a living being can have is to be a devotee of Krishna and to act in Krishna consciousness. In the material world, everyone is trying to be famous by accumulating a large bank balance or material opulence. There is a steady competition among karmis attempting to a wealthy society. The whole world is turning in accordance with that competitive mood. But this kind of name and fame is temporary, for it lasts as long as the temporary material body exists. One may become famous as a Brahmagyani, an impersonalist scholar, or one may become a materially opulent person. In either case, such reputations are inferior to the reputation of Krishna's devotee. In the Garud Puran, it is said, in this age of Kali, the fame of one who is known as a great devotee is very rare. However, such a position is superior to that of the great demigods like Brahma and Mahadev. This is the opinion of all spiritual masters. In the Itihas Samuchaya, Narada tells Pundrik, after many births, when a person realizes that he is the eternal servant of Vasudeva, he can deliver all the worlds. In the Adi Puran, in a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, it is said, Bhakta namanu gachanti muktaya shruti visaha. The most exalted position of liberation is given by Vedic knowledge. Everyone follows in the footsteps of the devotee. Similarly, in the Brihadanariya Puran, it is further stated, Adyapicha Munishresha Brahmadeyapi Devata. Until now, even the great demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva did not know the influence of a devotee. The Guru Puran similarly states, it is said that out of thousands of Brahmanas, one is qualified to perform sacrifices. And out of thousands of such qualified Brahmanas, expert in sacrificial offerings, one learned Brahmana may have passed beyond all Vedic knowledge. He is considered the best among all these Brahmanas. And yet, out of thousands of such Brahmanas who may have surpassed Vedic knowledge, one may be a Vishnu Bhakta and he is most famous. Out of many thousands of such Vaishnavas, fixed in the service of Lord Krishna is most famous. Indeed, a person who is completely devoted to the service of the Lord, certainly returns home back to Godhead.
You read this.
Or this is puppet only.
Okay. Read it like that. 4 lines like it.
It is said that out of thousands of Brahmanas, one is qualified to perform sacrifices. Out of many thousands of such qualified Brahmanas, expert in sacrificial offerings, one learned Brahmana may have passed beyond all Vedic knowledge. He is considered the best among all these Brahmanas. And yet, out of thousands of such Brahmanas who have surpassed Vedic knowledge. One person may be a Vishnu Bhakta and is most famous. Out of many thousands of such Vaishnavas, who is completely fixed in the service of Lord Krishna is most famous. Indeed, a person is completely devoted to the service of the Lord certainly returns home back to Godhead. There is also the following statement in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 13th chapter, text 4. After much hard labor, a person highly learned in Vedic literature certainly becomes very famous. However, one who is always hearing and chanting the glories of the lotus feet of Mukunda within his heart is certainly superior. In the Narayan Vyuhastava, it is said, I do not aspire to take birth as a Brahma. If that Brahma is not a devotee of the Lord, I shall be satisfied to simply to take birth as an insect if I am given a chance to remain in the house of a devotee. There are many similar verses in Srimad Bhagavatam, especially 3:25:38, 4:24:29, 4:31:22, 7:9:24, and 10:14:30. Who said, I do not know the truth about Krishna, but a devotee of Lord Krishna knows all the truth. Out of all the devotees of Lord Krishna, Prahlad is the greatest. Above Prahlad, the Pandavas are supposedly more advanced. Above the Pandavas are the members of the Yadu dynasty, who are even more advanced. In the Yadu dynasty, Uddhav is the furthest advanced, and above Uddhava are the damsels of Vrajadham, the gopis themselves. In the Brihad Vaman Puran, Lord Brahma tells Bhrigu, I underwent meditation and austerities for 60,000 years just to understand the dust of the lotus feet of the gopis. Still, I could not understand it. To say nothing of me, even Lord Shiva, Lord Anantashesh, and the goddess of fortune Lakshmi could not understand it. In the Adi Puran, the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself states, न तथा में प्रियतमो ब्रह्म रुद्र से पार्थिव न च लक्ष्मी न च आत्मा. Lord Shiva, the goddess of fortune, and even my own self are not as dear to me as the gopis. Of all the gopis, Srimati Radharani is the topmost. Srila Rup Goswami and Sanatan Goswami are the most exalted servitors of Srimati Radharani and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Those who adhere to their loving service are known as Rupanuga devotees. The Chaitanya Chandramrit, text 26, gives the following statement about Srila Rupa Goswami. The qualities of one engaged in the service of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, such as reputation, austerities, penances, and knowledge, are not to be compared to the good qualities of others. Such is the perfection of a devotee who is always engaged in the service of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Text. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, of the many capitalists who possess great riches, who is the topmost? Ramanand Rai replied, he who is richest in love for Radha and Krishna is the greatest capitalist. Purport. Everyone in the material world is attempting to acquire riches to satisfy the senses. Actually, no one cares for anything other than acquiring material possessions and maintaining them. The wealthy are generally accepted as the most important personalities in this material world. But when we compare a material man of wealth to one wealthy in devotional service to Radha and Krishna, the latter is found to be the greatest capitalist. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 39, text 2, what is difficult for the devotees of Lord Krishna, who is the shelter of the goddess of fortune? Although such devotees can obtain anything, O king, they do not desire anything. Text 248. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, of all kinds of distress, what is the most painful? Replied, apart from separation from the devotee of Krishna, I know of no unbearable happiness. Purport. Considering this, the Lord said in the Vedic literature, a person who does not worship me, who is unduly attached to a family, and who does not stick to devotional service, must be considered a most unhappy person. Similarly, one who does not associate with Vaishnavas, or who does not render service to his superior, is also a most unhappy person. There is also the following statement in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita 1.5.44. Out of all kinds of desirable things experienced in the life of a loving entity, association with the devotees of the Lord is the greatest. When we are separated from a devotee, even for a moment, we cannot enjoy happiness. Text 249. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then inquired, of all liberated persons, who should be accepted as the greatest? Lord Ramanand Rai replied, he who has love for Krishna has attained the topmost liberation. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 14th chapter, text 5, it is said, Mukta naam api siddha naam narayana parayana sudhullabha prashant atma kotishu api mahamune. O great sage, of the many millions of liberated persons and of the millions who have attained perfection, he who is a devotee of the Lord Narayan is very, very rare. Indeed, he is the most perfect and peaceful person. Text 250. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu next asked Ramanand Rai, among many songs, which song is considered the actual religion of the living entity? Ramanand Rai replied, that song describing the loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna is superior to all other songs. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 33 chapter, text 26. Lord Krishna descends apparently as a human being. Transcendental pastimes in Vrindavana, so that the conditioned soul may be attracted to hearing his transcendental activities. Non-devotees are strictly prohibited from participating in songs celebrating the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. Unless one is a devotee, it is very dangerous to hear the songs about the pastime of Radha and Krishna that were written by Jayadev Goswami, Chandidas, and other exalted devotees. Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison, but one should not imitate this. One must first become a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. Only then can one enjoy hearing the songs of Jayadev and relish transcendental bliss. If one simply imitates the activities of Lord Shiva and drinks poison, one will certainly meet death. Talks between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramanand Rai are meant for advanced devotees only. Those who are on the mundane platform and who study these talks in order to put forward some thesis for a PhD will not be able to understand them. Instead, these conversations will have a poisonous effect. Text 251. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, out of all auspicious and beneficial activities, which is the best for a living entity? Ramanand Rai replied, the only auspicious activity is association with devotees of Krishna. According to Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.30, we are asking you to tell us that what is the most perfect welfare activity. I think that in this material world, association with devotees, even if it is for a moment, it is the greatest treasure house for mankind. Text 252. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, what should all living entities constantly remember? Ramanand Rai replied, the chief objects of remembrance are always the Lord's holy name, qualities, and pastime. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.2.36 states, तस्मात् सर्वात्मन राजन हरि सर्वत्र सर्वदा श्रोतव्य कीर्तितव्य स्मर्तव्य भगवान नृणाम. Shukdev Goswami concludes, the business of the living entity is to always remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every circumstance. The Lord should be heard about, glorified, and remembered by all human beings. Text 253. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further inquired, out of many types of meditation which is required for all living entities, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further inquired, out of many types of meditation which is required for all living entities. Sri Ramananda replied, the chief duty of every living entity is to meditate upon the lotus feet of Krishna. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.14 states, तस्मात् एकेन मनसा भगवान सात्वतां पति श्रोतव्य कीर्तितव्यश्च देह पूज्यस्त नित्यदा. Sud Goswami replied, to the sages headed by Shonas, everyone should very attentively listen to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should glorify his activities and meditate upon him regularly. Text 254. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, where should the living entity live, abandoning all other places? Ramananda Rai replied, he should live in the holy place known as Vrindavana or Vrajabhumi, where the Lord performed his rasa dance. According to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.47.61, Uddhava said, let me become one of the Vrindavan's herbs and plants that are trampled by the gopis, who gave up all connections with family and friends and decided to worship the lotus feet of Mukunda. Those lotus feet are sought by all the great saintly persons expert in the study of Vedic literature. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, out of all topics people listen to, which is the best for all living entities? Ramananda Rai replied, hearing about the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna is most pleasing to the ear. Purport. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 33 chapter, text 39, he who faithfully hears about the dealings between Lord Krishna and the gopis in the rasa dance, and he who describes these activities attain to the perfectional stage of devotional service, and simultaneously lose material lusty desires. A liberated person who hears about the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna is not inclined to have desires. Once mundane rogue once said that when the Vaishnavas chant the name Radha Radha, he simply remembers a barber's wife named Radha. This is a practical example. Unless one is liberated, he should not try to hear about the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. If one is not liberated and listens to a relation of the rasa dance, he may remember his own mundane activities and illicit connections with some woman whose name may also be Radha. In the conditioned stage, one should not even try to remember such things. By practicing the regulative principles, one should rise to the platform of spontaneous attraction for Krishna. Then and only then should one hear about Radha Krishna Leela. Although these affairs may be very pleasing both to the conditioned and to the liberated souls, the conditioned soul should not try to hear them. The talks between Ramananda Rai and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are conducted on the platform of liberation. Text 256. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, among all worshipable objects, which is the chief? Ramananda Rai replied, the chief worshipable object is the holy name of Radha and Krishna, the Hare Krishna mantra. 6.33.22. In this material world, the living entity only business is to accept the path of Bhakti Yoga and chant the holy name of the Lord. Text 257. And what is the destination of those who desire liberation and those who desire sense gratification? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked. Ramanand Rai replied, those who attempt to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord will have to accept bodies like those of trees. And those who are overly inclined towards sense gratification will attain the bodies of demigods. Purport. Those when merging into the existence of God do not desire sense gratification within the material world. On the other hand, they have no information about serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Consequently, they are doomed to stand like trees for many thousands of years. Although trees are living entities, they are non-moving. The liberated soul who merges into the existence of the Lord is no better than the trees. Trees also stand in the Lord's existence because material energy and the Lord's energy are the same. Similarly, Brahman effulgence is also the energy of the Supreme Lord. It is same whether one remains in the Brahman effulgence or in the material energy, because in neither there is the spiritual activity. Better situated are those who desire sense gratification and promotion to the heavenly planets. Such people want to enjoy themselves like denizens of heaven in the gardens of paradise. They at least retain their individuality in order to enjoy life. But the impersonalists who try to lose their individuality also lose both material and spiritual pleasure. The last destination of the Buddhist philosophers is to become just like a stone, which is immovable. As far as the hard-working karmis are concerned, Srimad Bhagavatam states in 11th canto, chapter 10, text 23, after performing various sacrificial rituals for elevation to the heavenly planets, the karmis go there and enjoy themselves with the demigods to the extent that they have obtained the results of pious activities. In the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, text 20 and 21, Lord Krishna states, those who enjoy the Vedas and drink some soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet. There they enjoy godly delights. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the result of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. Therefore, after finishing the results of pious activities, the karmis return to this planet in the form of rain, and then they begin their life as grass and plants in the evolutionary process. Text 258. Ramanand Rai continued. Those who are devoid of all transcendental mellows are like the crows that suck the juice from the bitter fruits of the nimba tree of knowledge. Whereas those who enjoy mellows are like the cuckoos who eat the buds of the mango tree of love of Godhead. Purport. The speculative process of empiric philosophy is as bitter as the fruit of the nimba tree. Tasting this fruit is the business of cows. In other words, the philosophical process of realizing the absolute truth is a process taken up by crow-like men. But the cuckoo-like devotees have very sweet voices with which the name of the Lord and taste the sweet fruit of the mango tree of love of Godhead. Such devotees relish sweet mellows with the Lord. Text 259. Ramanand Rai concluded, the unfortunate empiric philosophers taste the dry process of philosophical knowledge, whereas the devotees regularly drink the nectar of love of Krishna. Therefore, they are the most fortunate of all. Text 260. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramanand Rai passed the whole night of Krishna Katha, topics about Krishna. While they were chanting, dancing, and crying, the night ended. Text 261. The next morning, they both departed to perform their respective duties, but in the evening, Ramanand Rai returned to meet the Lord again. Text 262. That evening, after directly discussing the topics of Krishna for some time, Lord Ramanand Rai caught hold of the lotus feet of the Lord and spoke as follows.
Ribbon.
Okay.
श्री गुरु पूजा श्री गुरु चरण पद्मा केवल भक्ति सद्मा वंदो मोहि सावधान महते यार प्रसादे भाई हे भवतोहि आजा कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो गुरु मुख पद्मा वाक्या सिद्धे ते कोरिया क्या और ना कोरिया माने आशा श्री गुरु चरणे रति प्रसाद पूरे सर्व आशा प्रसाद पूरे सर्व आशा चक्षुदान दिल जय जन्म जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान दे प्रकाशिता प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेदे गजाहर जरिता श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनार बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनार बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर दीवाना लोकनाथ लोकेर दीवाना प्रभु करो दया देव मोरे पद छाया श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनारा बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनारा बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना लोकनाथ लोकेर Prabhupada Patita Pavana. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana. Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada. Namah Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Vimade Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisheda Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivadari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Jai Shri Shri Gaurnitai Bhagwan Ki Jai Shri Prahlad Narasimhadev Ki Jai Raj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Krishna Prabhupada Ki Jai
इधर
वो द्वारका वाला